everyone, welcome back to another powerful episode of AI Biz. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a world where technology is not just disrupting the industries, but it's rewriting the rules of access, opportunity, and the growth. So, our theme today, where we will be discussing, is scaling with AI and also the lessons from fintech startups. And to guide us through this whole discussion, we have someone who's not only living this reality but shaping it. So please welcome joining me our guest Justin Kuyper. So welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you, Avik. Thank you. It's great to be here. Really a pleasure.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we dive deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you to Justin. So, Justin is the co founder and CEO of OpenVest, a fintech platform that's breaking the barriers by giving everyday investors access to elite style investment portfolios that were once locked away for the ultra wealthy. Yeah. So, with a background as a hedge fund manager, a Columbia MBA, and a mission driven vision, he left Wall Street to fix a broken system. And his story involves grit, global perspective, and a determination to uh, democratize the wealth. Yeah. So, I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into the discussion. And Justin, welcome to the show. It's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Avik. One point I'll just bring up as we're getting started. So, just for even individual viewers in India, so I actually have spent quite a bit of time there, even on business. And we are actually planning to open up shop in India at the beginning of next year. So, we're just getting set up now. So, if anybody's interested, essentially what we're doing is we're democratizing the elite private equity and hedge fund access that at least in the US and in the West or Western parts. I mean, you guys have it in India as well, but you don't get access to unless you have a net worth, usually at least in the US and Europe in the 10 million plus range. And I would say it's probably comparable in India as well. Uh, so you can click on the Get Access Soon button on our websites. That's at openvest.co, and you can sign up there if you're interested. And we're making it very affordable for any individual so that they can grow their wealth in the best ways possible, other than just sticking with their, bank manager and the like.
Exactly. I really love that. And so to start with, I mean, like one of the biggest hurdles for any early stage fintechs, like which is very compliance, right? But uh, for many startups, like it's like a never-ending obstacle course. So I mean, how do you use AI to open West to streamline compliance processes without compromising on security or trust? What do you say?
Yes. So that's a very good question. So let me dig into that a little bit. So I think you should think of AI as a horizontal enabling layer, right? So the basically you have to I guess in our case, we had, so my co-founder has somewhat of a legal and engineering background, meaning in Silicon Valley. And so we have enough of a knowledge base to know what questions to ask the AI, especially on the compliance front. So for example, I think in India, it would be, knowing the ins and outs of the SEBI, right? And asking the right questions. In the US, it would be, what is the SEC frameworks meaning that we can adopt in order to comply with FINRA, make sure we're complying not just on the federal level, but also the state level. And then you ask a couple more questions with regards to that and say, how can I do X, Y, or Z, right? So in our case, it was, how could we, not have to register in each state, but maybe are there any federal exemptions? And then suddenly the AI will prompt you to go through those. And then all you have to do, so it will give you answers, but the other key element, which I think we're all aware of, is there can be some level of hallucination. So usually what you have to do is ask a Claude or a GPT or a Gemini, whatever you're using, and then fact check it with Google links, at least is the way we've approached it. Uh, so on the compliance side, that's actually really helped. It's not just helped in terms of not having to pay lawyers for every aspect, but it's also helped in terms of the productivity, meaning the time spent can be much less because it's just a matter of distilling the information and then fact checking it to make sure that we can proceed with this correctly. So, for example, in the FINRA setup, you have to set up by state, right? At least in the United States. And what's interesting is that each state has a different fee that they charge to get the access rights to sell to each user. Some states, it turns out Kansas is free, just in case anyone was wondering. California, I think, was 120, it was either 120 or $140. Texas is $75. Now, these things don't seem to make any sense because if you think about it, Texas has 30 million people or more. So meaning it's the equivalent of one major city in India, right? Or a tier one city, for example. Whereas California has 40 million, so 10 million more people, but they're and it's $20 more, or sorry, 20 or 30 or $40 more, uh, but it's only $75 for access to 30 million, whereas you're paying $40 more on a fee basis. And then other states have up to three or $400. So it's like it really, and that's per state. So it adds up usually to between 10, I would say it's probably around, yeah, 10, between 10 and 20,000, somewhere in that range.
Hmm.
Um, but that's where the AI really helped on the compliance front, because if you're not able to ask it the right questions, it will not lead you towards the right paths. But with some level of knowledge in your field, you can really use these tools to find sort of the underlying other 50% that you need to get down into the details. So that just hopefully that gives some clarity, at least on how it's used, at least on the compliance side.
Exactly. No, I totally agree on this. Definitely. And like some might argue that AI introduces risks of its own, uh, bias in decision making, or maybe regulatory blind spots also. So, how do you balance that speed and scale with accountability in such a kind of sensitive areas?
Yeah. So I think in terms of right, so blind spots is a good point. So one thing that we've done is if we don't feel that we have the full set of knowledge, even after going through the different AI tools and running these sorts of queries and analyses, we'll honestly just send emails to the specific representatives, whether it's at the FINRA or the SEC, or I guess I mean we're doing it now with the SEBI as well. You're just sort of checking like what is just making sure you have all your bases covered. And if there's something missing, usually they'll reply back and give you some sort of indication of how to do things properly. So I think again, it's more like an enabling tool that you figure out what you don't know, but at the same time, there's a saying, right? It's not what you know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know that just isn't so, in the sense that if you're completely unaware of something, then that can be troublesome. That's why we always fact check, and meaning just write emails to people or experts in the field who we think will know the answers and give us at least some color on things that we could be unaware of. Uh, so I think that's the other thing. The other part is that I think we stayed, we've launched recently, at least in the US a few months back, but also when you're still small, you can afford to make smaller mistakes. You'd rather make them than while you're in the process of scaling. So I also think that's something that just with time sort of naturally rectifies. But I think that the tools on AI specifically, it still saves you a dramatic amount of time. And I think ultimately what you don't know, you should just ask, meaning like especially on the compliance side, the regulatory bodies, and just get a complete answer from them. And that way, if you're checking with them, you're checking with the AI, usually you can figure out from there sort of what's the right path to go down, or what information's missing. So there is some element of solving for a puzzle sometimes, but you're still able to deduce or at least come to conclusions as long as you continually ask the right questions. And uh, yeah, I think hopefully that provides more light.
I agree. I totally agree. Yep. Yep. I mean, it's really fascinating, Justin, because I think listeners, especially those who are building in the regulated industries, uh, will appreciate like how AI can act as a shield and an accelerator, obviously, when handled responsibly. So that's
Yes. Yeah, so I can also give you, I mean, there are also many examples where it can be used, AI can be used irresponsibly as well. So, I mean, like any tool, right? Whether it was, I guess, Microsoft Suite, what launching in the mid 90s and going forward, and any sort of software technology layered innovation. This is a tool. So you can use the tool well or you can use it poorly. So another examples would be, there are examples of legal cases, right, where individuals, meaning, uh, I know, associates at specific law firms who will just copy exactly what the Gemini or or sorry, I guess in the prior cases with the GPT would give you, and sometimes they were hallucinating and the cases didn't exist. So when the judge was looking to check, oh, is this actually something that happened, or where did you find this case information? They ended up getting caught, meaning it was obvious that they just pasted into a GPT, and so that obviously had very adverse outcomes for the client. So that's why what we do is always at least a 2 or 3 layered check, meaning start with the AI, but then just realize that you always need to fact check it somewhere else. And if you can't find that, then you cannot rely on at least the information that the AI is giving you at that moment in time.
Mm, very true. Yeah. So, like now, customer acquisition is usually the make or break factor for the startup. So, and you have built the traction with limited resources. So, if you can share, like, how has AI helped you punch like above your weight when it comes to identifying, targeting, converting customers in a kind of crowded fintech landscapes?
Yes. So one thing I think is interesting about us is I think we are very differentiated, at least. So the space is very competitive, right? There are a lot of platforms. I mean, both in India and the US. So I mean, like, like I think Grow is like a very popular platform in India, and Zerodha and all those guys. And then we have our equivalents here. But a lot of the ones, especially in the US, that I can tell you, they're doing the same version of the exact same thing and just have a different business name associated with them. So we're very differentiated in the sense that we are offering you actively managed portfolios, which none of them are doing, and we're delivering the outperformance. So if you go onto the application or even on the website, you can see the performance there over the past few years, and it's just nothing compares to any of the other existing platforms. That's one aspect. The other aspect is we are very, very, very low cost in terms of at least offering a low monthly flat subscription. So that has also helped us drive user acquisition earlier on. And the other key part is individuals can start with very small amounts. So at least in the US, the way we've done it is as little as 300 US dollars. So most individuals feel very comfortable trying something out for a few $100s and then seeing how it works. And what we've seen is that more than 80% of our initial users have subsequently reinvested, and after they've seen it work, even in the initial launch period that we've had. So those are some elements. Um, but like I said, we're basically the only actively managed offering in the entire space. And so, if you know what you're doing on the sort of investment management side, you can really drive returns by doing that. And I think at least our initial users uh, understand and see that.
Exactly. And do you think that smaller startups with lean budgets actually uh, have an advantage here, which is compared to the big banks, because they experiment faster without legacy systems holding them back?
Yes. So on that front, absolutely. In terms of the smaller startup competing with the bigger guys, so yes, most of the time what happens is for the small startup to grow, they really have to do it through, I mean, there's really only one effective primary means that at least I've seen regularly, and that is purely through an innovative solution, right? So if you are managing to acquire customers in a reasonably affordable way, at least meaning something that can last and won't just sort of crash 1 or 2 years later from over raising a VC round or something. Um, that is a mechanism to drive further growth.
Yeah.
Uh, so there are different, yeah. So anyway, on that front, what I think is that uh
Mm.
the element of like acquiring customers at a cheap, affordable cost, but that also reinforces the value of the platform is probably the most critical aspect of that.
Hmm, that's amazing. And also, like, your journey is not just about the AI, but it's also about the founder grid. And you literally spent 6 months in India overseeing every line of code to ensure um, OpenVest could scale globally. So, what lessons did you take from that period that other founders, especially who's those working across borders, can apply when building tech that needs
Yeah.
to scale sustainably?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So one thing I will say is that I think if you're building something from the ground up, I think being in person, especially if you're building technology, technology is an all-consuming 24-hour, 24/7 sort of endeavor, meaning at least if you're building something and pieces are going wrong, like in order to build what we built, we had to one, comply with regulations, right? Two, build the platform, connect the APIs, make sure everything is working appropriately, and then we had to do a lot of user testing just to map out the kinks in the platform to make sure it was working at a level where customers would then enjoy it, use it, adopt it, and then refer other individuals. So I think we're at that phase now where we're driving the natural network effects of the referral growth because it is working well. And so, like I said, so anyway, that I think that's the important element, especially when thinking cross border. You have to be on the ball and work like you have to go over every detail because if you don't, it's not going to work well enough where users will adopt it. And so that's the unfortunate, that's the sort of reality that maybe is not thrown out as across as often. But if you're working from, for example, the US India corridor, the European corridor, maybe you have to make sure that you're on the ball. And so that can be remote, but in-person interaction will be necessary to at least some degree. And I think we see that especially with all of the you know
Mm.
back to office trends that have been happening more recently after the sort of pandemic period.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Yeah. And looking back, would you recommend other founders to go as deep as you did? Or was that level of immersion necessary only in your unique situation?
Yeah, so I guess my background's a little different, right? Because obviously, so my mom's from Delhi actually, but I grew up in the US, so like I have a little bit. That's it's more of a person. Although that didn't necessarily impact me on the business front, but to be honest with you, I found the right group and the right team uh, in India, meaning actually in Surat of all places,
Mm.
and so that sort of what drove my personal journey. But I would say, but there are obviously a lot of individuals. There's a lot of cross-border interaction, especially between India and the United States. And what I would say is that I think some level of immersion or in-person or in-office working is necessary. So even if it's flying every so often, but if you have a team based in India or if Indians have teams based elsewhere, I would highly recommend doing some level of travel to meet and work in person. It would, and that goes across fields. It's not just in the sort of heavily regulated fields. I would say even if you're building, let's say, a light-ended SaaS tool, I would still recommend it because what happens is in the startup world, it's not just it's the iteration, but it's also how quickly you fix problems will make a difference in whether you reach scale or not. And so that in order to harness that speed, the in-person interaction will be required.
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. And at the heart of this, like, isn't just AI or the fintech, but it's all about democratizing the wealth. So, in your view, how can AI fundamentally reshape the wealth gap in America? Like, can it actually level the playing field, or are
So
we at risk?
that's yeah, that's a very good question. So what I think AI can do is enable the same opportunity access. So in terms of, so I guess what technology has allowed us to do is basically distribute, uh, especially through our platform, the same level of high-end private equity and hedge fund investing that you would not get anywhere else. And that is only enabled because of specific technology, software, and AI. I don't know if this type of platform, if I'm being quite frank with you, would have been launched in any other era. It's just that we're reaching a point where all the tools and the technology have sort of melded to create this type of solution. The other aspect is that I think in the US, there are also now federal exemptions for launching platforms exclusively through technological interfaces. So it's a combination of legal compliance and deep financial understanding where we provide these solutions to the individuals who don't have the time, the expertise, or the knowledge, right? And so we've started in the US and we've been growing very well in the states we're in so far. So we expanded from 3 states to 11 states. But like I said, the big opportunity I see is actually in India, if I'm being quite frank with you, meaning the US and India. And so that's the reason why we're preparing for launch there even now.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, some skeptics argue that no matter how advanced the tools are, structured inequity can't be fixed by uh, the technology alone. So, what's your response to that? I mean, where does OpenVest fit in?
Yeah, so because you can start on the platform for very small amounts,
Mm.
one thing it can do is enable your personal freedom. So it's not going to let's just take a simple example, I don't know, just for the sake of it's not going to take Ambani's wealth and distribute it to every other Indian individual, right? But what it will do is it will enable every individual who wants to sort of grow their wealth in a highly mechanized compounding, way to actually build their wealth if they play into the system. Whereas before, that was not necessarily the case. I mean, both honestly, both in the US and in India, meaning it was sort of dependent on which wealth manager or which fund manager you had and whether that specific individual had a sustained track record. Uh, this sort of enables, again, like I said before, but I'll say again, is sort of it's a horizontal enabling layer that will allow any American, I guess very soon, any Indian to tap into that and start investing so that they can save and grow their wealth and, enable that for their families, their children, their wives, their aunties, all of that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a powerful perspective. And I think listeners will walk away not just the inspired about AI, but also challenged to reflect on the systems that we build and who they are truly serving. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, we're all about opening the playing field and at least giving individuals who want to participate. Yeah, and like I said, what we've seen is people that have tried our platform initially have subsequently reinvested or are reusing it, meaning they see the value they're getting. And again, the other thing is there's no sort of layered management fees or anything of that sort. It is purely like a low cost flat monthly subscription model. We want our users to benefit, and that's how we become sort of a powerful customer centric platform. So that's the ultimate goal, and I think that is something that will resonate. Meaning, it's resonating well here, but I think it will resonate in India as well.
Exactly. Exactly. So, Justin, this has been such a rich and energizing conversation, I'd say. And from automating the compliance to redefining customer acquisition, from personalizing the finance to reshaping the wealth gap, I'd say you have given us a true founder's perspective on scaling with AI. So, for our listeners, the key takeaway here is very clear. Like AI is not just a buzzword, but it's a force of multiplier, right? Uh, so, used responsibly, it can help startups compete with the giants, and more importantly, it can make the systems more fair, more accessible, and more human centered. So, Justin, thank you so much for joining us and sharing both the strategy and the soul behind the Open West. I really love that. And um, for all the listeners, if they want to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Yes. Uh, you can go on the website openvest.co and click get access soon. You can just enter your name and your email if you're interested in this type of platform. So again, we're coming to India very soon, and we do have plans to launch there just within the coming months. So that is on the cards right now. The other way is through Twitter. So that's at openvest1. Instagram as well, same username at openvest1. And then I have a LinkedIn as well. So Justin, last name Kuyper. And then I'll even drop my email. So if anybody wants to reach out, it's jak@openvest.co.
Perfect, perfect, lovely. Great. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, this is your host, Avik, reminding you that the growth is not just about the resources, but it's all about the resilience. So, creativity and daring to rethink the rules. So, stay curious, stay bold, and as always, stay healthy in mind and in life. So, thank you so much.